Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. The website is dsmsports.net, where you can find more content and episodes, and of course, follow along, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. We have a best of show for you guys today. Haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm getting behind. Try to do one every quarter. We might try to do a couple over the course of the holiday season, just to give you guys something to listen to if you are so inclined to listen while you're traveling or enjoying the holidays. And good Lord, I'm just looking at the list of segments we're going to have on this episode today, and I am just blown away. Continue to be grateful for all the people I get to talk to on this podcast and to be able to learn from them, and hopefully you get to learn from them as well. So just a quick rundown of who you're going to hear from on the best of episode show today. First is going to be Ryan Delgado. Back when I spoke with him, he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. He is now with the Atlanta Falcons. Just really good stuff from Ryan. After him, you'll hear from Brandon Barrio, who is with LSU Athletics, LSU football nowadays in particular. And wow, just a fantastic conversation talking about the LSU football dream season in 2019 with Joe Burrow and the national championship. Really cool stories and insight. Followed by Brandon, you'll hear from Ed Cahill. When I spoke with Ed, he was with Orlando City SC. Now he is with AMBSE, which is the parent company for the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United, as well as Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Great insights from Ed. Really enjoyed that chat. Then after Ed, you'll hear from Matt Lawler. This was a fantastic conversation with Matt. He is with AEG. You may have heard of it. And we talk about sponsorships, partnerships, and social media ROI with sponsorships. Just a masterclass there. You really don't want to hear that. Then after Matt, you'll hear from Ollie Scheuer. When I spoke with him, he was with the AFL, Australian Football League. Now continuing doing work in the greater sports space. Really good insights about how the AFL grows their fan base. And so listen up for Ollie. And last up, after Ollie Scheuer, you'll hear from Brad Friedman. When I spoke with Brad, he was with minor league baseball, MILB. Now he's with STN Digital, which is an agency you almost certainly have heard of, along with a bunch of other all-stars there at STN under David Brickley. So, fantastic list of guests for you to hear from on this best of episode. But first up, as I said, you'll hear from Ryan Delgado. When I spoke with Ryan, he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. Now he's with the Atlanta Falcons. And in this part of the conversation with Ryan, we'll talk about forming the Rays voice. You know, the Tampa Bay Rays have a reputation. They've been around for a little while now. Are kind of known as the little engine that could, but they always seem to find a way to get wins and to get those diehard fans to support the team. So you'll hear a little bit of this conversation with Ryan. I definitely recommend the full episode to hear everything. But listen up to hear from Ryan Delgado.
We are who we are with the Rays. We know that we struggle with certain things, and the talk about us is really never going to change in the near future. But we have a way to combat that, and thankfully our team, like, people would never know that we had the 6th most wins in baseball the last 10 years. No one would know that.
Wow.
So we have the ability to kind of, we decided, you know what, instead of being a pushover and very vanilla and straightforward and kind of just not really sticking up for ourselves and our team and whatever it may be, and also even who we represent and what we do in the community, we decided, you know what, let's defend ourselves a little bit. And we kind of made that switch my second year here, commenting, replying, being factual. And like one of the things that we kind of have our pillars is be smart. Kind of how do we voice what we know we are to other people. And that's one thing that we really wanted to hone in a little bit. So like we'll comment, even if MLB posts something that doesn't include us, like we'll jab at them and people will be like, oh yeah. And we'll go back and forth with certain things. That's something that we as an organization were kind of afraid to do a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, because our baseball ops are so ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no reason for us, like, we can't be ahead of the game. Like, we can do certain things that other clubs simply can't do or won't do. So I think it's important for us to find those little spots where we can be, kind of flex a little bit and be like, yeah, we're a good team. We're good. We represent what's good about this area, this organization. So It's a little bit of mix of both, and I had to kind of, you have to push buttons. You have to, sometimes ask for permission, but it's all about pushing those right buttons. Just being careful. I think we walked that line pretty well. I haven't gotten yelled at, so I'll take it.
Yeah, you got to be able to, to go up there and take your hacks, to use a baseball analogy, especially when you are, you're in the same division as the evil empire, the Yankees. You're in the same division as the Red Sox with their money and their budget and their history, and you have even the Blue Jays and their Canadian fans. It's a difficult division, and you guys on the field have stood out by kind of zigging where other people zag, and it sounds like you guys can take the same tact on social to be like, yeah, you know what, we may do it differently, but we know what we're doing, and we're proud of ourselves because we have a lot to stand on as far as results as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we try to be different. That's one thing that we have written in my boss's whiteboard. It says be different.
Totally. If you could give us an idea of what that infrastructure looks like. I think especially in Major League Baseball, social has been something that's developed, evolved over the years when it comes to the clubs, how they interact with MLB and autonomy over their platforms. That was several years ago, but we've since moved past that to some degree now. But what's the setup like for the Rays? Is your boss or your boss's boss fall more under the marketing side, or is it more PR, broadcasting? Like, what does the infrastructure look like, and if it does, kind of affect your own goals and how your success is judged, and how's that come into play?
Yeah, I think we might be the only club in baseball that has this kind of setup. I'm pretty sure we talked to other teams about it, and they kind of they come in wide-eyed a little bit. We explain to them, but our group, I'll break it down a little easier, but our group is basically 40 people, and that's not just marketing people per se, but our VP oversees now 40 plus people. That's including interns now. Wow. And the way the marketing structure goes, it goes from our team president to our vice president of marketing creative services. There's then on the marketing side, then there's two directors, a director of marketing and a director of creative services, and then a part of our creative services group. So basically, think of it as an agency that's hired now in-house. So a lot of teams will now use outside agencies to create their content or templates or whatever it may be. Everything that we do is in-house. So from every commercial we put on television, everything we put on social, everything we put in the building, everything is all done in-house from this group that we have. And from what I understand, this was done the year before I got here. Saved a ton of money from what I understand. But it's nice for me because we're all in house. We speak, we're working on speaking the same language, and we have the same goals and the same bosses and things of that nature. But in total, we have 5 video people, 4 designers, and then 2 motion people. Wow. And 2 photographers, and none of them are solely for social. Mm-hmm. All the people I just named, they touch points are like, I can have a graphic made for social from, let's just say Joe makes a graphic on social, and then he might turn around an hour later and make a graphic that's going to be put on our infield concourse somewhere. So they're all interchangeable. No one is solely social driven for us. Yeah.
So does that mean that a lot of the creative look or feel or even content is oftentimes, the graphics you see on Twitter or Instagram, are similar to the graphics you may see if you go to a game and see it on the video board? Is that consistency the goal, or do you try to make it different for each audience?
So that's the ultimate goal, and we've inched closer to that as it's gone on. Now that this will be my 4th season here. We've inched closer as we progress. But yeah, everything for the most part matches. Our website, our email, our digital, our social, our video boards in the ballpark, our ribbon boards, our outside, advertisements, everything. It all has the same look. So we do a campaign launch. We'll probably have it sometime in March, I believe, this year, and then that's our campaign for the year. Everything looks the same. So we try. It's a hefty group. Having 40 people is a lot, but everyone has to use the same kind of rules and campaign look. So.
Well, I have a couple of directions I want to go, but first I have to ask I'm an operations geek sometimes. So what's it like? Kind of how do those 40 people work together so that everyone knows how to make a request and timelines for things and can drop everything to get things done? Is there a formal brief process? Is it a lot of meetings? Is it using Slack or Asana or Basecamp? Like, how does it all end up, like a well-oiled machine to some degree?
Yeah, so we have two project managers, two ladies that sit right next to me, and they basically oversee all of our projects. So what you'll do is this will change in 2020 from what I understand, but just to give you how it's worked, is we'll submit something on our Microsoft SharePoint intranet. Mm-hmm. I'll get the specs on it, when I need to buy, what it's for, any details that are required, and it'll go into our system. And then the project managers will then assign it to, whoever's applicable, designer, video, motion, maybe a mix of both. Mm-hmm. And then they'll submit the proof when it's completed. They'll put a proof in a program that we are re-upping called InMotion. I'll click the link into InMotion. I then can review the proof. I can drop in any comments, edits. I can timestamp it and just say, here's what I need changed. And if nothing needs to be changed, then I just hit approve, download the file, and then if anything needs to be changed, it'll kind of recycle till it's approved. So it's not a terrible process for us at all. I've been doing, I can't even imagine how many projects I've submitted, probably hundreds, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's been pretty clean for us. It's worked. Having the project managers definitely helped. I never worked in an agency, so I don't know if it's like that in a regular agency. But it's it works for us.
And then how do you go about kind of prioritizing content as well? Like if Kevin Kiermaier makes a crazy good catch and you're like, okay, well, this could make a great motion graphic, or we should really do a lot with this and turn him into Superman for a diving catch. Like, how do you justify this is worth us doing? This is where we should be putting it. This is how much time I'm willing to have a designer put into it. Like, are some of those more like measured than others? Like, how do you guys go about prioritizing what's worth doing?
I mean, it's I think we'll probably talk about it later, but it's real time for us. I mean, we don't have the ability to wait a day for things,
right?
So like, we're up, we're up and at them playing together in less than 24 hours. But like for that, it's as simple, just, hey, text, hey, this has happened. You think we can do something for it? Yeah. What are you thinking? And then we have a quick conversation. And then if the person can do it, they can do it. If not, if they can't, it's not a huge deal. We try to, optimize any moment that we possibly can as quick as we can. It's never fully easy. I mean, we don't have, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of there's no one dedicated strictly for social.
Right.
So sometimes no one's on for a game. If it's a Tuesday against the Kansas City Royals, there's likely no one to be, at least a creative person in terms of like a graphic or a video person. Yeah. There's likely no one to be as a support there. But some we're going to work better at 2020, get a little better. You just can't ask people to be here.
Totally. One time here.
But yeah, it's usually, hey, can we do something? Yes or no, and then we kind of go from there. I always save. I have so many things saved about ideas, concepts, and how we utilize them, just to give them some examples if things were to happen. That's kind of the way that where we work best. But generally, yeah, that's how we kind of go about it. It's being nimble, man. It's a long season. It's a lot of games, and we got to be quick. So
hell yeah, it's the blessing and the curse of having 162 games in a season. If you have a great player, an amazing game, the good feeling, it only lasts that long. But by the same token, if you get shut out and you only get 2 hits or something, then you have another chance to get back on the saddle the next day and feel better. So it's good. It has its good parts and its bad parts for sure. Let alone the daily grind of having to manage content and manage creative for all that. Are you guys looking at, because the content teams kind of work across the board, are you looking at what succeeds on organic social and then taking those learnings, if these learnings apply across the board, that this will also work well if we use it in an email or use it as an ad or use it on our video board? Do you find that those insights are consistent across platforms, or do different audiences, different platforms respond differently to creative looks?
Yeah, we mostly try to keep it all separate. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, because certain things. I know there's an example of the Clippers that I've seen where they made a hype reel about, I think it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think it was last year I saw this, and it was like, oh, let's throw and pay, and it worked out great for them in terms of conversions. So we do that by planning it. I don't think we've been responsive and been like, oh, this video is actually really good. Let's optimize this elsewhere. It's always usually planned for us. But something that we definitely, we'll keep an eye on 2020 and beyond, really, as we try to hone in a lot of these things. So.
Super cool. Having a great conversation here with Ryan Delgado, manager of digital marketing and creative services for the Tampa Bay Rays. You talked a little about looking ahead to the 2020 season and having a campaign launch around March when everything starts to really hit the ground running. So what's it like to go? What goes into the planning of those campaigns, and what does it mean to really have a campaign? Does it mean taglines? Does it mean aesthetic? Does it mean hashtags? Does it mean what kind of content we're going to create as feature stories? Like what's it like going into a campaign? And if you want to use last year's as an example, this year's is probably still a work in progress, but just give us an idea of what that actually means.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a brand new look. It's a fresh take on literally everything that you'll see from the Rays during the season. Each season's a new season, and each team has a different personality, and it's our job to kind of find what that tone of that team is, what their feel is, and really go from there. I mean, next year, this 2021 will be kind of, focused on like we're still, we made it to the playoffs, but that's not where we want to be. We want more. We're still hungry. So it's trying to find what that team's sense is really. That's all headed up by our creative team. I'll have input if they ask for it or if they want certain examples. But that group that I mentioned earlier, they head up all that stuff, and they go through. I mean, I saw probably I think 4 or 5 different attempts at it to see what kind of fit a little bit with kind of what we were feeling. But yeah, that's something that we'll run with all year, and. Man, it's crazy to see. It's really done all in house. As far as I know, a lot of other clubs, they'll go out of house and give them a bunch of ideas, and the agency will come back with a bunch, and they'll go back and forth. For us, it's all internal, which I think is a testament to the group that we have.
No, I totally agree. I've been on both sides of the coin when you have it all in-house and you have an agency as well on the other side. And it definitely helps when it's in-house and everyone knows the brand, everyone lives the brand every day, and that you don't need to have that communication, telephone game quite as much about this is who we are, this is, and trying to convey what it is. So I definitely feel you there for sure. What was that sort of, I guess, campaign for last season? I really enjoyed the, it was very colorful, very bright, very, playful almost in some way. Like, what was the mindset behind the aesthetic last year, and just the messaging that you guys want to put out there?
Yeah, I mean, it started all back in spring where it was one of our intro campaign was "We're Not Listening," basically. And it was, the premise of the video goes all the way back to, to all the punts being like, what are the Rays doing? They're breaking, they're starting a reliever, and they don't know what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. And you go out and win 90 games, and, don't make the playoffs, unfortunately, but I read there's only three or four times a 90-win team didn't make the playoffs, I think, and I think the Rays were 3 of them.
Wow.
And so it's some crazy stat like that. The Rangers are the other one because we beat them in a tiebreaker, so it would have been us if we lost that. It's been crazy to see how it's been. It went all the way back to the We're Not video, had a bunch of clips from pundits and the MLB network and just radio and all that. And being like, we're going to show you guys, prove you guys wrong this year. And once we started, we changed it more into like we're here, and then we more game based. And then we were searching for something for the postseason to be that voice of like, here's our tagline a little bit. So, Tommy Pham, unfortunately, he's not with our team anymore, but he's like, yeah, we're hungry. We're this is a hungry group of guys. He kept using that word over and over again. Yeah. We're like, let's just go with it. So we kind of used the players, interviews and ideas in the clubhouse and just ran with it. And the colors itself, it was something that we've been wanting to do is involve more yellow. It's a color that we're fortunate enough to have, and like you said, it sticks out. And we were able to utilize kind of like a different look, and we figured out most eyeballs will be on us at this time. So let's go hard. Let's go crazy with it. So.
Hell yeah. Really good stuff from Ryan. I really enjoyed following along in his career and learning from him over the years. As I mentioned before, he is now with the Atlanta Falcons. Highly recommend listening to that full episode, though, because you'll learn a lot about just social media branding and voice and what goes into forming a personality and really just good stuff from Ryan. But next up on the Best of Digital and Social Media Sports podcast, this one was such a fun interview. You're going to hear a little bit of my conversation with Brandon Barrio. As I mentioned earlier, he is now the Director of Football, Social Media, and Branding for LSU. He still covered a lot of sports back when we spoke, but has been at LSU throughout his career. And just what a fun ride we got to talk about the 2019 season when LSU football with Joe Burrow won the national championship, and LSU was just churning out incredible content, great access, great copy, great concepts, just amazing stuff. And you're going to hear a little bit about what goes into all that, and also just what it was like being part of that incredible ride. And if you picture the Joe Burrow smoking cigar video or GIF, however you have seen it, Brandon was part of the team that put that together, and the famous Joe Burrow walk for his senior night at LSU. Just so much good stuff to learn from, and Brandon offers great insight. You'll hear a little bit of that, so stick around now because here it is, Brandon Barrio of LSU.
Starting in camp, our football staff was like, this is going to be special. This is special. This is different. We hire a new passing game coordinator, and every day it was like, okay, this team is different. This offense is different. And, being from Baton Rouge and being here for watching LSU football for a long time, was kind of like, okay, we'll believe it when we see it,
Yeah.
And first game out, we go, Joe Burrow throws for 5-6 touchdown passes. Like, okay, well, and then it was, Georgia Southern. We'll see what happens next week when we go to Texas. And then we go to Texas, and it's like, oh, man, okay, let's see what happens in 2 weeks against Florida, and it just kept happening, and it was just, after Texas, like, okay, this team's got something, and after Florida, it's like, okay, Joe Burrow's got a little something, and he broke the LSU passing touchdown record back in his 4th week of the season, so at Vanderbilt. So it was kind of like, okay, there's a little extra something special in this season, but it was always like we had to prove ourselves, right? So, okay, well, let's see what they do at Florida. Okay, well, are they going to have a hiccup after Florida? Looking forward to Auburn, and then it was, well, can they really stop? Can they do this against Auburn? And we did. We didn't score as many points, but we still put up 500 yards.
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, well, we got a bye week. We got Bama. Well, if they can beat Bama, then maybe we got something. When we go to Bama, we beat Bama. And it's like, okay. Internally, back in the first week of October, it's like, okay, this team's special, but, we're still saying the same thing, Joe Burrow is special, but, we're not going to pump him up for the Heisman unless he beats Alabama. And then he goes in and just, you saw the game. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And then, we just keep going. And then it's, the defense isn't very good at Ole Miss. And it's just constantly having to prove that this team is good. And I don't know, they play with a chip on their shoulder. And, I think that's what made them special, is that people doubted them. And we kind of fed off that on the social side of that. Oh, they're not good enough. Joe's not good enough. And I think our videos and our photos and our captions played to that. And I think our fans appreciated that because they're sick of hearing that,
Yeah.
When the committee says they're not a complete team, that lights a fire,
And when you're going through that, or is there someone in your role and your team overall on the content side, on the creative side, on the communication side, what does success look like for you guys? I mean, you want to tell stories that resonate. You want to hit those emotional strings. There are certain metrics I'm sure you're paying attention to. Like, ultimately, what are those objectives, both surface level and bottom line, that really are the ones that you guys are like, we can affect these things because of the opportunity that's being presented to us based on the success on the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still asking those questions even after this year.
Mm-hmm.
What are the goals? The goals are to tell the story of LSU, to reach our fans, and to show what a Saturday night in Tiger Stadium's like. Because obviously our number one goal is to sell this program for recruits. And when we do that, it'll kind of filter down to our fans and our donors and our sponsors and everything. But it's an interesting balance, How do you do everything, right? And I don't think you can. But we want to be LSU, and we want to use the resources that we have. We're not any other team. We're not any other school. We're unique at LSU. And so we got unique people creating content for us. So we're not here to do what other people are doing. And I think we saw that this year with the hype videos. People have been doing hype videos for years. And people have been having people narrate hype videos for years.
Yeah.
But I think what separated it this year was the quality, and the quality of the video, the quality of the narration, the quality of I think the most undervalued part of those videos was the script.
Yeah.
And Cody Worsham from our digital staff was the one who wrote those. I don't know how he kept writing them every week. But we would read the script, and I get chills just reading it, and I'm like, dang, this is awesome. And then on Thursdays afternoons, Will would text me, be like, hey, here's the video. And I'd sit at my desk and I'd be like, holy crap. Like, I don't know. I think it helps being Cody is from Baton Rouge. Will's from Baton Rouge. Derek Panamsky, who would set up the voiceovers, is been an LSU fan all his life. He's from New Orleans. And, I think we get it. We get what LSU's about. And I think that's an advantage that we have on other teams and other schools is people get the program and get Coach O that work with us. And the people that aren't from Louisiana, Matt Tornquist and Lindsay, they've completely bought in and in 2 years get it, and I don't think that happens everywhere.
That's so great. I'm now like picturing there needs to be like some sort of brick wall in your office so that after you watch the videos, you can just run through.
There were a lot of expletives when I saw the Joe Burrow Heisman finalist video. I mean, I think I scared some people. I was slamming my fist on the desk. I was so pumped.
Oh, it's so great. I'm guessing like the team there just embraces the fact that it feels like the bar kept getting set higher and higher, and all of a sudden people were not just enjoying the videos coming out, but then they were talking about, I can't wait to see the next one, and it's going to be just as good. It's almost a level of pressure, but I'm sure it was embraced as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of pressure. It was the first couple of weeks we set the bar. I mean, we had Shane West, Jamal Adams, Jordan Davis. I mean, like pretty big, James Carville, like big names, not nationally necessarily big names, but big names to Louisiana. And people, would be like, who is this? And it's like, well, nationally you might not know who it is, but locally that's who we're talking to. I don't care if people nationally like it, Hopefully the content's good enough, secondary past the LSU fans that they're like, dang, that was a good video, or that made me feel something about LSU that I never felt before, and that, I think we had to kind of take a step back a lot of times, be like, we're not serving a national audience necessarily first. We're serving our recruits and we're serving LSU fans.
Yeah.
And if it trickles down to everyone else, then that's great. And towards the end, kind of having to take it to the next level every week, I think it did that. But the reality is all these people are LSU fans, and there's an LSU connection with everyone. And I think that's what was special. I mean, Scott Van Pelt in that video glowed about LSU when he came for an Alabama game.
Yeah.
It's not just some random person that we're picking. There is a purpose to these people. Tim McGraw is from Louisiana. John Goodman was a guest picker. He lived in Louisiana. His wife's from Louisiana. The Rock played for Coach O. Like, Jonathan Maggie is from New Orleans. Like, it's not just random people.
That's so great. And does that get back to the players and coaches as well? Like, are they screening those videos? Are those the same videos that they're watching before their walkthroughs, before their games?
No, so our Jacob Brown, who does internal video, is the one who does it for the team.
Mm-hmm.
The only video out of those that the team saw first was the one that The Rock did, and they showed the team on the Sunday before. But every other time the players see it, we actually usually post it in the middle of our Thursday practice, so they don't see it until they get out of practice. Because it is really for the fans.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Rock is a little different, so they made sure to show the team first, and then I was like, please don't, because no one really knew it was The Rock. We actually had some clues out there, and people just, people assumed and kind of got it, but the majority of people had no idea until it came out. But we asked the team, like, okay, we're going to show y'all, or Derek's going to show y'all, but don't say who it is. You can talk about how great the video is, but just don't say who it is, because we want it to be a surprise on Monday morning.
That's so cool. And ultimately, one last thing about the videos, how ultimately do you measure there's so many views that you can get from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, but there's also people talking about it, how it affects recruiting, how it affects people, the perception of the school that goes beyond just the vanity metrics, and people talking about where they're friends. Like, is there even a way that you guys can even attempt to assess the full value of just how viral that made the LSU brand beyond just college football fans? There's
no way. I mean, it reached SportsCenter. I mean, we were watching SportsCenter one day, and the video came out at 4:30 or something, and I'm watching SportsCenter, and they're talking about the video. They got a screenshot of the video. I'm like, holy crap, like, what? Like, I don't know, it's just kind of gone far beyond of what we could have ever imagined, and the work that Will and Cody and Derek especially did. We could have never imagined that it would get to that point. But, I mean, it's besides the exposure on social I mean, just to the recruits, it's been insane. I mean, Derek was telling a story the other day that one of the recruits was in town on a visit, and he was sitting in the recruiting lounge, and it's just him and his family, I guess. And he said, they're like Sports Center's on. He goes, I don't want to watch this. I just want to watch the hype videos. So he sat there 45 minutes just watching all the hype videos for the year, like that. That's why we do it, like that's who it's for. It's not for fans, it helps, but it's for everyone else to show the program.
That's so cool. I love it. And when the athletics department and football, when the school is getting so much attention, it is not just the team, it's not just the athletics department, it is the school. And I think one thing that has stood out to me about LSU is looking at TikTok. LSU does a great job on TikTok. And it's LSU. It's not LSU sports. It's not LSU football. Yep. It's LSU. And so that always stood out as something that was unique to me. And so what is the relationship like with athletics and university? And, does the university really stand, how do they stand to maximize the gains they can get from from the really the big pedestal that you guys were on this year?
Yeah, I mean, so the guy who runs social for the university is actually the former gymnastics football SID. So I have his job. So we have a great relationship, and they send, photographers and video people. The video guy is actually a former, worked in athletics before. So we all know each other, and we collaborate a lot. But Jake was the one who started that TikTok account, and he's like, dude, you got to get on this thing. I'm like, we can barely manage Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with the people that we have right now. So, like, that's y'all's thing. Like, we don't have the time or the effort, to do that. And so they've taken it with it, and they've run with it, and they've done some really cool things.
Just super cool. And I will say, anyone listening that wants to check out a school doing a good job on TikTok, LSU does a great job on there, and they pull in, it's not just sports, it really is full university, and there's some great content on there. A few minutes left here with Brandon Barrio before we get to episode's shareable stat. I want you to take our listeners inside a little bit of the experience of preparing and executing around the national championship. Like, what was it like before you guys were headed to New Orleans, being there, getting ready for the game, and then of course the aftermath, the glory after the game, and heading back to Baton Rouge eventually?
Yeah, I mean, we were at a pretty good advantage of obviously being in New Orleans. We really didn't bring any more staff than we brought to the semifinal, but just the knowledge of the Superdome, the knowledge of the city, the knowledge of everything helped. So we meet every Tuesday. We met every Tuesday from July to, we even met just yesterday, 2 days ago. And every week we kind of plan out the week and kind of look forward for some big stuff. So we met the Tuesday before we left, and kind of planned out almost, hour by hour of the event. And I think we were in a unique position that we've never been here. I've never been to the national championship. We haven't been since 2011. In 2011, that was like a whole different world, right? Like none of the stuff that we do now was relevant.
Oh yeah.
So I think we were at an advantage in that everything we did was unique to LSU. Like, I think Clemson was at a disadvantage in that they've been here for through the last 4 years or whatever. So their fans were just used to it. So anything we put out, our fans were like freaking out over. We could have put a picture of anything out and they would have loved it, So that's an advantage for us. Yeah. And so we knew that going in, that basically anything we do, it will do well, But we want to tell the story of our fans and of the team and continue to do what we do and not change anything. So like I said, we planned as much as we could pre-championship and kind of game day. And it was kind of like, well, it's kind of hard to plan out a week from now what's going to happen on game day. So we kind of, briefly talked about it. And then, we went into the week and it was madness going in, with it being Louisiana, it's just a whole nother layer of stuff. So when we went that day down in New Orleans, me and Matt rode in the cop car down there as the lead of the motorcade basically. And it was just kind of surreal to kind of like, just kind of, being from Louisiana, it was just wild to be in that car with fans. It's raining and people are lined up on the side of the road. It was just wild to think about. And so we get down to New Orleans and all of us, the people that are involved, talk, every day. So everything changes every day. So we're always talking about, our plans kind of changed each day and we did some really cool stuff. But kind of going it, we finished Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday night. It's kind of like, okay, this is it. Like, we should probably sit down and talk again,
Yeah.
Since we're kind of all over the place. So we sat down Monday morning and kind of just planned out the day. And that was probably the best thing that we did all week, was just sitting down with our photographers and video and designer and our senior AD and our website guy about, okay, this is what we're doing from, basically 10, which was when we met, to the end of the day. And I think everyone felt really confident in the plan. And there was some concern about our, one of the major concerns was about the photography. So we had 5 photographers there, and I think we're one of the only schools in the country, and I don't think our photographers get enough credit, that live transmit in game. So we're not running cards, we're not doing any of that. I mean, our photographers take a picture, and we have the pictures pretty much instantly.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so, and I don't think people realize that. So Joe Burrow scores, and 2 seconds later we have a picture of him celebrating, which is pretty unique.
That's
so
coming over Wi-Fi? How does that work?
Yeah, it's coming off of Wi-Fi from their phones. They can select the pictures. But the concern was that the Wi-Fi in the Superdome is not great. So our photographer's like, look, I'm going to have to run Ethernet lines. So he got there at like 11 a.m. and ran Ethernet lines to the end zone so that he could still live transmit. So that was a huge part of our success on game day too. I'll have to go back and look about how many pictures we actually tweeted, but those pictures go on graphics and score updates and all this other kind of stuff. And then ultimately at the end of the game, their live transmitting ended up working. But yeah, it was just a crazy week, and a lot of credit goes. All of the credit goes to the people that actually created the content. And I just press tweet or press send. Like I have no bearing on any of the great work that they do.
Did you go into that final moment? Did you guys kind of all know this is what's going to happen? We're going to be on the field, and then it's going to move to the locker room. Then we're going to get back to the hotel or to the buses. Like, what were the moments after the game like? And I'm sure, as you being being from Baton Rouge and growing up a fan, it's got to be hard to balance doing your job while also enjoying the moment.
Yeah, so in game, I serve as the SID upstairs, because my boss usually is on the field for the game. So I'm up there doing random TV stuff, helping with notes, participation, social media stuff. I'm running all the accounts, or at least Twitter. Our GA Grant runs the Facebook, and I do the Instagram as well. So it was kind of like, oh man, thank God we were up by whatever we were up when I was able to go down to the field, because I don't think my heart could have handled that. So Grant, our GA, is the one who, when I go down with like 8 minutes left, he handles social for the rest of the game. So obviously being an SID primarily, that kind of, you have to plan for that, right? Because I'm part of the conversation during the week, but he takes over at the end, which is, the most important part, in terms of getting our message out of what we're doing, save the date for the parade, and all our fanatic stuff.
Right.
That's that you have such a small window to take advantage of, and put all the stuff out there, right? So I go down with like 6 minutes left, and Grant has everything he needs. He has all the links and all the graphics. I don't know, but going down that elevator was just kind of like, holy crap, like, is this actually happening? Like, am I really, I don't know. It was just like one of those moments. We go down the field, and post game, I'm usually with Joe, taking him to interview. And we plan all this, and nothing has really changed since post game protocol. So like Gus, our other staff photographer, he goes with me and Joe. And then Matt Karen, who's our softball video coordinator, who helps out with our social stuff, he goes with Joe. So it's me, Joe, Gus, and Matt that kind of walk the field and do whatever. And then Chris Perrin, our other staff photographer, goes with Michael Bonnet, who's our main SID with Coach O. And he stays with them the entire time. So Joe's actually, for the first time in a while, is actually on the field to kneel the ball. So I have to go out on the field, and it was just a swarm of people. It was unbelievable.
Oh wow!
And he likes to stay on the field before he does an interview and go shake hands and talk to coach and talk to the quarterback, the opposing quarterback. And so he kind of like looks at me. He's like, "Wait, what?" Like, I don't know. I don't think it hit him yet. Like, the game was over. Like, we got to go. So we get to his interview, and we just stand. I felt like we stood there forever, waiting for them to come to Maria and Joe. And there's a great shot by Matt Karen of that we posted the next day or Tuesday about he's kind of like looking into the sky and the confetti's falling down. I mean, it was like just an unbelievable
Magical
shot. So yeah, it was just kind of wild, and I know it hit him there, and we had to go to the stage and do all that, and then he does the alma mater, and we go straight to the locker room, and that was just a scene that I've never seen before, with the cigars and the music and the former NFL player. I mean, it was surreal. I mean, we got Mike Thomas, Zeke Elliott. It's like a who's who of people that want to congratulate Jim, want to congratulate the team. It was just wild, and managing that and kind of looking at social at the same time and getting players to interviews and open locker room. It was just a wild scene after.
I told you, Brandon Barrio, LSU Athletics, just offers such good insight. Really fun interview, really informative. I highly recommend listening to that full episode because you'll really enjoy it. You'll learn a lot. But next up on the Best of Digital and Social Media Sports podcast, listen to a part of my chat with Ed Cahill. Ed is a really smart guy, really sharp, really thoughtful and articulate in conveying his ideas and strategy. Just really gets it. As I mentioned earlier, Ed is now with AMBSE, which is he oversees or helps oversee the director of brand digital partnership for Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United, the MLS team, as well as the Atlanta Falcons home venue, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. When I spoke with Ed previously on this podcast, he was still with Orlando City SC, as well as the Orlando Pride of Major League Soccer and NWSL, respectively. So in this part of my chat with Ed, you'll hear a little bit about his time with the Dallas Cowboys, in addition to, of course, Orlando City SC, and it really just what goes into building this a content strategy, what it's really like. If you'll have to listen to the full episode to get the full effect, but you're going to get some great insight into what went into that for both the Cowboys as well as Orlando City. So listen up to part of my chat with Ed Cahill.
Yeah, that last part you mentioned, I think was great insight in terms of, sometimes you have to look past those metrics, and going from a place like the Dallas Cowboys where I was, the fan base there was so rabid.
Yeah.
They'd eat up every piece of content you had, and so we were so metric driven because just the amount of it was basically our statistics were only limited by the amount of content we could produce, and it was almost like it was suffocating sometimes. I felt like, man, I can literally stay here all night and put out more content, and it will exponentially increase our viewership because those fans and the amount of them just ate up everything. I mean, we did podcasts once a day that had 40,000 viewers, and we had 3 different shows, and now they do like 4 or 5. And Derek Eagleton, who runs that department there, is a master at just creating different pieces of content for different people, and I learned that a lot from him. And then, so when I got to Orlando City, it really went from being a numbers game to a brand game. I remember taking a picture of my website traffic my first week there and sending it to Derek Eagleton, who heads up the website in Dallas. And I think I had 12 people on the website. And DallasCowboys.com never had less than probably 20,000. And I was like, well, this is a major difference. And it really made me focus that, I really couldn't play the numbers game at the start. I had to work at something else, which was our brand, especially coming into the city, coming into the league. Our brand was really our most important thing, and I worked so closely with our marketing team to integrate, which is something before I'd gotten there wasn't really achieved, and other places I had been wasn't really solid. And over the last 5 years, I've built such a solid relationship with our marketing team, and we're so integrated that we're all pulling the same rope when it comes to brand, and that's been our biggest achievement. And to me, all the other numbers come with it. But if we're not putting something out that represents the brand and is telling our brand story, then we're failing. So that's always the big part. Obviously, you have the things that you kind of have to put out occasionally, and we do things. We put out player interviews and stuff, which isn't necessarily brand heavy, but our main focuses are telling the brand and also telling the story of the team. And I found that the numbers have steadily grown. If we continue to focus on that and stay true to that, then we almost don't have to worry about the numbers. We've been, for a small market as small a market as we are, we're one of the smaller markets in MLS. We're consistently the top 5, if not top 3, in most major web and social metrics. And then I'm a nerd, so I'll adjust that out for population, and we really blow everyone out. Because we're actually in such a small town and drive such large numbers. And we've done that by just focusing on our brand. And, we have brand core values and things that we want to show and emphasize, which is our fan experience and our game day experience. And that's core to everything we do. I remember breaking down some, with our video editors a couple years ago and telling them that, hey, when we do game recaps, I want to see 60% atmosphere, 40% game. And that was such a hard thing for them to understand, but it was really based on what we're trying to represent, what we're trying to show out from our brand.
That's really well articulated, and I think it makes sense too, especially coming from the Cowboys, where it really is more about the brand than the football necessarily. You have plenty of people that will wear the star, that will wear their Cowboys gear, and probably don't know the difference between a dime defense and a zone defense, wherever it may be. I mean, I'm speaking out of turn here myself. And then you go to Orlando City, and maybe to some degree the same thing, where it really is more about the brand and getting people to rally around the team because it's the team of Orlando, and they may not know about soccer formations. They may not know the difference between a direct kick and an indirect kick. So how do you focus on developing soccer fans while also thinking just as much about fans that are looking for a good time and also fans that are proud to support their city's team?
Yeah, we actually spent a lot of time early on educating. We created a program called Soccer 101 and had just countless articles if you really wanted to dive in and learn. Some of that I actually don't even think was that necessary because, there's some complexities to soccer, and obviously there's some complexities to the league, and MLS at its core is pretty complex in terms of, salary cap and player movement. And there's definitely some things that typical American sports fans aren't familiar with, but we found that really our goal was to get people to our matches. We always said if we can get people to 2 matches, we firmly believe we can make them a lifelong fan, because just being there in the moment and experiencing it. And soccer at its core, again, it's really not that complicated. When you sit and watch the game, as long as you understand the offside rule, like, you pretty much got it. That's really the only overly complicated thing that tends to slip people up. But when you're there and in the stadium, that stuff kind of fades away. There's not a lot of stoppages in play like you might have in basketball or football. We have to learn the different fouls and, hey, why are they stopping this? Why are they, taking all this time to reset, and the referees are having to come on? There's not a lot of that, and it's quite a pure experience, I think, for a new fan. And we found that we just need to expose this game to as many people as possible, and really not worry as much about overly educating them and dragging them down with the boring. We want them to see our smoke and our supporters and our, sick goals and incredible athletes. And that's what we have to show off to get people to come out and see us.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there with, really projecting the atmosphere. I'm out here in Los Angeles, and I shake my head in disbelief at LAFC and what they've been able to build in such a short time.
It's incredible.
Because of the atmosphere and because they showcase the atmosphere, and I feel like I'm a shining example. I go to the games and I tell my friends and my peers and my coworkers,
right, you
have to go. Like you won't believe it till you see it.
That's the game plan, right? You're the guy we want in the stadium. So, man, yeah, I mean, LAFC, just a fantastic case study. A big market where you come in and there's already a team who kind of has had the superstars. They've had the Ibrahimoviches, they've had the Chicharitos, the Beckhams, and this team comes in and just totally upends it by focusing on their brand and focusing on the core of the city. Having that downtown location and really focusing on what it meant to be in LA. I think it's just they've done such a fantastic job, and great organization, great people there, and I wish them all the success going forward. I know they'll have it.
So how do you actually? It's one thing to convey the atmosphere, but how do you start? Like, how do you get the fans in the building to have that kind of energy and enthusiasm? With what you're putting on the video board, with getting them to chant, and you hope it can just happen organically, but it's not that easy to have those really vehement supporters groups that are chanting throughout the game and on their feet and making noise. So how do you first foster that? How do you support that? And how do you make it feel like it's organic if the fans are doing it and it's not just like you guys kind of directing them?
I would love to be able to take credit for the atmosphere, but I really don't think I can. It's just, we were lucky to have a couple years build up in the USL coming in before we were awarded the MLS franchise. And really, we had a hardcore subset of fans. It might have only numbered 4,000 or 5,000. And then just the momentum we had going in, we played our first couple of years in the Citrus Bowl, and our first game we put 65,000 in the building. I mean, it was an effort for marketing and all of our digital and social team to get everyone in that building. But we sold 65,000 people on the product on that day. And I think there's so many people, as we tend to look back and talk to people, and that day was the day that made them the fans that they are. But no, we can't take credit for it. We live in a great city of, with a lot of blue collar people and passionate people who have been waiting for a team like us for a long time. And, I think as long as we stay true to them and never deviate from that, then I think they'll always be there.
And I mean, I think we all, and you guys do a good job of this, LAFC does a good job of this, the Sounders do a good job of this, several other clubs do as well, of really making it feel like that European atmosphere, that European feel where people are on their feet the whole game. And when you guys look for inspiration, do you look to other American pro sports teams that are successful? Do you look to college athletics? Do you look at the European football clubs, or is it just a different culture, a different mindset when you're here in the States? I mean, I guess we all want to see Major League Soccer continue to grow as a product and as a league in the U.S. So, what do you take for inspiration, and what are the general keys and motifs that MLS as a whole should take into account?
It's really hard to look at the other leagues and try to put yourself in their shoes, because those leagues have been there for a long time. Soccer in Europe is just so ingrained in that culture, and that's, we don't like to compare ourselves apples to apples to them, but obviously being here in the States, we compare ourselves to other American sports teams all the time. We have an NBA team in our market, the Orlando Magic, who do a fantastic job and constantly keep us on our toes. And we look everywhere for inspiration, and we look everywhere for motivation. And the fantastic thing is, I mean, when you look at MLS, I think they've been really almost, if you look at the Premier League and compare MLS to kind of where we are in terms of social media and content, to be honest, I think we're well ahead, and we've had a head start. So they've kind of had a head start as a league. I think from a digital perspective, the league has done MLS has done a fantastic job at motivating all teams to move in that direction. 5 to 6 years ago, and if you sat apples for apples and compared MLS to the Premier League and content and social media, I think MLS far and above is the Premier League. And really, there's a lot of teams around the States. I really look at I used to work there, but I look at the Cowboys a lot in terms of how they handle their bulk content and really serving the fans. I'm a big fan of LSU and Clemson and what they do. South Carolina, my alma mater, I think has really changed in the last couple of years. Oh, yeah. We look at the Vikings a lot. We think the Vikings do a great job of storytelling and brand building. For us is where the Vikings really, I think, shine. And so we look everywhere for inspiration, but really the competition is within our league. Everyone just pushes each other. And we're actually all, a lot of us are very close. They had the digital departments in the league, and we talk and communicate, and it's a really good relationship. But we're all trying to beat each other in terms of what we're outputting at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear about just the idea of this brand and making it cool to be or an MLS fan, making it cool to be an Orlando City fan, and something that you wear as a badge of honor. And I look at that similar to if you are a European football fan living in the States, and you think of it as, I'm cool, I'm wearing my AS Roma jersey or my Manchester City jersey, wherever it is. And you guys, and MLS has seen that as a source of growth as well. When they have a David Beckham come over and play a long time ago, when they have a Zlatan Ibrahimovic come over and bring those fans with them. So, and you guys have had that experience as well with Kaká on the men's side, with Marta on the women's side, with the Pride. So when you guys get that, that opportunity, I guess, thrown in your lap with an internationally famous player or players, how can you maximize that, and how can you also make sure that you're growing the right fans? It's one thing to be able to get a lot of Kaká's fans from overseas, but you ultimately want to create more Orlando fans that are local, can come to games as well, I'm sure.
Right. Having a superstar is obviously fantastic, and Kaká and Marta were two stars, I don't think I could have ever imagined having on our team, and not only from their ability on the field, but what they do for the game of soccer off the field, for kids in their community, kids where they came from, both from Brazil, and it really inspired generations of players there, especially Marta on the women's side. The women's game in Brazil is you would think it would be, as big as the men's game, but it hasn't been. And she really kind of led that revolution and, told those kids to dream and aim for what they wanted to accomplish. And, for us, it gave us instant credibility in the league and in the world. And one thing, we obviously try to capitalize on that and produce as much content and showcase them. But like you said, I think it was really poignant what you said about having to make sure those fans stay afterwards. So you can't solely focus on them. Hopefully you want to draw in some of their fans worldwide and capitalize that and show them what else your team has to offer. And actually, when Marta came here, I clipped it out from the press conference and sent it to my CEO at the time. She had said she saw what our club looked like on social media and how great it was, and that's what helped her make a decision to come here. And I clipped it and I was like, hey, this is why it's important what we're doing. It's we're recruiting, and that's what a lot of colleges have done over the last 5 years. They've started to recruit players through social media, and that's why it's such a big business there now. But yeah, so we try to recruit their fans too to stay, and we get a lot of it with the Orlando Pride, because Orlando Pride in women's soccer, their fans are so avid and they are fiercely loyal to their favorite players. And so we get a lot of new fans coming in every year when we acquire new players, especially national team players. And we really want to make it hard for them to leave. Even if their player leaves, we want them to stay and be fans for life. So, again, having stars is fantastic. And I think the key is being ready to capitalize on it when they get there, not trying to play catch up when they get there, having the infrastructure in place, to capitalize on it and not wait until they get there and then panic and try to staff your content team.
Yeah. I really look on with a great deal of admiration of what you guys do on the Orlando Pride side. One of the more successful women's soccer clubs out there for sure. And Marta certainly has helped that, and you guys have really embraced it and used the opportunity and made the most of it because you guys were ready, because you had the operations in place, and I love that. And of course, we have these kind of natural, organic bumps in soccer when there's a World Cup, when there's an Olympics, when the women's U.S. team goes on a run, and hopefully the men's team will in the future as well. When that happens, when there are these moments, first, how do you prepare for that? How do you make the most of it? And what ultimately is the generation of fans coming of age now, or the ones that you are trying to convert into lifelong City fans? Is it the kids that are playing soccer today? Is it just the young people that are looking for social outings? I'm sure it's a combination of all of the above. But are you guys going after the soccer fans? Or are you guys going after everybody?
Yeah, we're really kind of going after two major categories. We go after the soccer enthusiasts, which is your more hardcore soccer fan, where former soccer players or fans that have watched the English Premier League. But really, our core category is sports fans in general. We very much appeal very well to sports fans, and all the metrics and data that we have shows that our brand is recognized very well in that group, and is competitive with the NFL and the NBA, and the league. The MLS just provides us so much fantastic data to leverage. A lot of it I can't actually say on this podcast, and it's so thorough, and it gives us so much guidance in terms of the different areas we need to push into, and they really coach us up on how to reach those specific fans, and they arm us with everything we need to know. But yeah, it goes way beyond just the guy who plays soccer, the kid who played soccer. It's really everybody. Anyone that's interested in sports is a big play for us, and civics as well. That's something that what we call civics are people who have a lot of city pride and pride in where they're from, and we think our brand and soccer here has a great play for that. So we try to push into that a lot as well in terms of having pride for our city, showcasing what Orlando truly is. Hey, we're not just the theme parks. We have this side of us as well, and we like to always say it's Orlando versus the world, and that's how a lot of our fans and the people in the city feel, and we try to lean into that as much as we can.
As I mentioned, Ed is a really good talker, really gets it, really knows his stuff, is doing great work now with AMBSE, but highly recommend listening to that full episode, because if you're in the greater content space at all in the sports world or even beyond, you really will learn a lot. Next up on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, I mentioned this one earlier. This was a masterclass. I listened to this one myself multiple times just to take notes. I learned so much. You're going to hear part of my chat with Matt Lawler. Back then he was director, now he is senior director of digital media of global partnerships for AEG. And we talk about what it really means to measure partnerships, especially in the social media space. We always are talking about what's the ROI of a sponsorship, or what's the ROI of a partnership. It's easier said than done, but Matt offers some answers to those really difficult questions. I asked him the hard questions, and he came back with some fantastic insights, great information, great fodder for thought. And this is just a part of my conversation, so stick around. Here it is, a bit of my chat with Matt Lawler of AEG.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, I'd love to be able to tell a partner that I'm going to drive the end sale and be able to track that. But I can't guarantee that because I don't have, all of my hands into the partner ecosystem, especially you start talking about automotive, where I have a pretty extensive background. There's so many different factors that you have to consider. The fact that it's still very much an in-person process, buying a car, and people go in to the showroom to make that decision, and then there's paperwork that you sign. It's not like buying Nikes off of the internet. It's not like buying beauty products off the internet, where I can track your interest all the way through to a sale because you enter your credit card for a product that costs between $20 or $200. Right? A car is a 5-figure purchase at minimum, sometimes a 6-figure purchase, depending on how balling you are. Right? And a lot of times we don't use the media that allow us to track those kinds of purchases. So I think, even if it were a pair of Nikes, right? I wouldn't expect Nike to want me to track all the way down a sale because that's what they do.
Right.
And that's what most brands should be doing. If you're not looking at how your inbound is converting into to sales, then I'm not sure how you have a business. At the same time, we shouldn't just be out here, selling product without any understanding of what the return is. So I think there's a conversation that's always ongoing with us and our partners about what can we measure, what's the right thing to measure, and then how does that contribute to the overall development of the partner's business.
And it really is a partnership. Like, I think one of the more traditional things that we see in sports all the time on social in particular is the whole we won, so you get a free order of fries tomorrow at Carl's Jr. or whatever, or we scored 5 goals, so you get 5 free rings of Buffalo Wild Wings. Any number of those sort of activations that take place when something happens within a game or within a game environment. And yes, we know that either a fan might show that tweet to redeem their offer, or they might print out or show a coupon, and then it's entered into the system at the POS, so within the restaurant, for this example, and then the restaurant and their brand and their group knows how many sales they drove. But is that an area that you want to make sure that loop is being closed, so that and just kind of trust that they're going to report appropriately that, hey, because of that promotion this past season, we had 565 coupons redeemed, and therefore that's 565 fans that came in and redeemed that coupon. Like, is that an area that you and your team want to be able to go down that path and get that final result, or you can only get those impressions, get that stuff in front of fans, and then it's sort of in their own silo at that point for the partner to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of our partners, we do have the ability to show them down to products being sold, right? We have concessionaires inside of our venues that are selling Coca-Cola product, right?
Yep.
So what does it look like for us to tell Coke, here's an understanding of the marketing that we did and the lift in quantity of Coca-Cola sold in venue? Like, that's absolutely something we do and we should be doing. And I think, the same way that I would expect a brand like H&M or like Heineken to understand, how they're moving their own product, agnostic of whether it's, tied to one of our partnerships or not, our partners should expect that we know what's happening inside of our events and inside of our buildings the same way. And so tracking that is super critical. Now, when you start talking about marketing that leads to things outside of the event, then it becomes a little blurred, and that's where I think that ongoing conversation has to happen. But the best partnerships are the ones where a partner says, yeah, I would love for you to track down to the action I need to have happen on site, because then maybe that'll help you better target people on your end to get them down that funnel, right? Or to get them through that journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's, those kinds of partnerships, the best ones that we have are the partners that really kind of open their business to us. And then we do so in return, and the integration becomes seamless. Amex is a great example of this, right? They're a pre-sale partner of ours on some of our biggest events. And so, what kind of integration does it take for us to make those tickets available for Amex cardholders? What kind of integration does it take for us to be able to offer things inside of our venues for people that have those cards? That level of integration, right, can only come with a certain level of partnership and trust.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes a lot of sense. I love the stuff. Going deep here with Matt Lawler, Director of Digital Media, AEG Global Partnerships, and you are, your role is digital. You're obviously, partners are not necessarily siloing themselves with their deals, and I think this space has definitely matured a lot over the last decade plus since you've been in this space. That that deals do think about cross platforms, do think about multiple channels, do think about that we're not going to just this is not going to be just our Facebook and our Twitter, our social media side of things, and we're going to do something completely different on the experiential side or on the out-of-home side. So how does your team there, and just even in your background, do those cross-platform promotions and make sure that everyone is talking to each other when you're formulating a deal and ultimately executing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, truth be told, a lot of the deals are still very siloed. Mm-hmm. And there's several reasons for that, right? It's no one person's fault, no one entity's fault. I think if you look at how we even talk about media these days, we have to break out traditional from digital. And then within traditional, we've got to look at out-of-home versus print versus radio versus television, right? And then within digital, even there's breakouts for search and paid social and digital out-of-home. And it's just like, there's still a ton of fragmentation even inside of all of the media that's getting delivered. So there's a thing that naturally creates silos just when you're talking about advertising and marketing. But then when we go to market and we try to, offer up things for our partners, a lot of the conversations hinge on who we're talking to. So inside of a company, there may be somebody that's just responsible for one channel, right? And they may work with a number of other people, but they may not collaborate the way that, a cross-channel marketer may want them to.
Yeah.
Or they may not have the budget to deliver an experience or a marketing campaign across channels, right? Because every channel needs to see budget in order for it to work. So I think the cross-channel stuff is, ideal, right? I would love to do cross-channel marketing with all of our partners, but, one, it's capital intensive. Two, it requires a level of coordination that is not always possible even. I mean, you might have the best organization in the world, but just somebody's colleagues are working on 3 other priorities that are huge for them, and they just don't have the bandwidth to collaborate. Normally, they're very collaborative. So it's never guaranteed, but it's always the goal. What we learn is the best partnerships are the ones that leverage all channels to kind of create that rising tide for all the boats.
Yeah.
So I think, if I had it to do in an ideal world, everything would be cross-channel. Nothing would be siloed, but, unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you make about how it does take 2 to tango. Both sides need to have that level of collaboration and organization. Otherwise, it's not effective if the partner only has one marketer or a couple marketers that are organizing this deal, and then your side is really organized across social and out of home and all these different areas to activate. It doesn't really sync up if it's just one person on the other side. So it's an interesting way to think about it, and how you need to have that sort of that level setting and that sort of collaboration across the board as well. Where is social fitting in these days? I think you and I are old enough in this space where we're not too old, but we're old enough to remember that social, and in some ways still is, it was a throw-in. It was an afterthought. It was, okay, we got all this stuff, and also we're going to throw in a few Facebook posts, or we're going to throw in a couple tweets. It was literally a throw-in, and then it became something of an accessory later on, where it was kind of an afterthought, but at least they were paying something for it. And where is it today? Where is it today? Does it still have a long way to go? And is it still sort of secondary to the bigger picture stuff?
look, I mean, there's still brands that are trying to figure out social, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still brands that are figuring out how to increase their spend or leverage spend on a paid basis, or even just create content in a way that makes sense. I saw a post on a Facebook group that I'm a part of that talks about this finance company. This lady was like, we need to be posting in more real time. I know it, but we can't get past the compliance issues. My leadership doesn't fully understand what the value of social is. And I think that's not uncommon, despite Facebook's outrageous market cap. Like there's a ton of people making a ton of money on Facebook, and there's a ton of people that have not figured that out. So I think, the answer to your question, unfortunately, is it depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Social, for a lot of brands, is leading the way. And brands are designing campaigns to have social hooks because they know that's going to drive their business. So they're thinking about it social first. There are other brands that are thinking experience first because they know if they build the experience, people will, through the behavior they're exhibiting across all of their platforms already, capture that and deliver it on social.
Yeah.
So we have partners where social is an afterthought. We have partners where social is the thought. It depends on the sophistication of the partner.
I definitely want to go down both these paths here, both on the experiential side and also the social side. But let's put a bow on the social stuff, and also that's where where this podcast is most geeked out about. So tell me, like, what are some of the KPIs that people will look at with social? I think I don't want to turn into an equation where it's impressions and it's engagements and it's engagement rate or whatever it may be. There's a lot more to it. It needs context. What's the impressions of? Is it just a logo on an image or on a video, or are they using the product in the video or in the image? And is it a certain audience that you're trying to reach? Is it the right audience that the partner wants to reach, or is it just a broad swath of the fans of a given team or a given entertainer or whatever it may be? So where are we with the metrics, and how much does that come into play when trying to put a value on a social activation? I'm sure it does play some role, but is it as contextual as I guess it should be?
Yeah, well, this is where I go back to understanding the partner objective, right? Because the metric ultimately is going to change by the objective. And so I remember maybe about, it would have been almost 6 years ago when Facebook really started digging into objective-based advertising and building campaigns based on objective. You had a major shift in the way you had to talk about the success of social with people. Before it was just, track the engagements, track the engagement rate, track the shares, but very few people outside of influencers, really nobody's getting paid based on engagements and shares.
Right.
You need transactions, or you need leads, you need viewers, whatever that metric is for you. Now it's trackable through social. The pixels that they've developed, the partnerships that they've made with companies like Moat and Nielsen and Millward Brown. You can run not just branded media where you drive impressions, but you can look at brand lift at the end of a campaign and as a result of a campaign. So now, as opposed to just looking at impressions and context and going, oh, hey, advertising works. When you drive impressions go up, right? You can say the impressions went up, but to what avail? Like, did people feel more strongly about the brand as a result of seeing that message? Did we run control tests for knowing that? And I think that's where I always move our team into the three categories of the journey that everyone seems to break down, which is basically awareness, consideration, and then intent or purchase. Some people view those things differently. But within your awareness bucket, you can look at things like brand lift, reach. I would even say sometimes viewership. So video view metrics, a lot of times for me, fit into awareness and not necessarily engagement, just because there's so much passive video viewing happening on social now. Consideration is where I bucket most of the other engagement. If you're liking content or you're clicking through something, you're showing that you're engaged with it, but it doesn't necessarily signal intent. Intent is really like that strong sign that you want to consider the service or the product. And those are things like leads. Those are things like starting a cart or getting into the shopping flow.
Right.
And so within those three categories, I always try to get our team, where are we in the categories? Where are we on the journey? Are we in awareness? Are we early journey? Are we close to purchase? Are we late journey? And then get very specific. So is it a subscription TV service that we're trying to drive subscribes for so that they can see people viewing the fight, the UFC fight? Or is it an app download that costs $5, right? In there, all of those metrics communicate something real back to the brand. And even if we're not driving those things specifically, did we fill the journey with people that could deliver those in a way that the brand found it meaningful? So those categories are the things that I look at. I don't look so much at the engagement metrics the way that we used to.
Yeah, I love that. Do you start with that as that's the primary objective of a given partnership? Let's hone in on what you're trying to do. Are you honing in on the consideration stage? Are you trying to drive that last mile intent and purchase stage? Are you trying to drive the awareness? Does every partner want every campaign to be everything to them, or are they focused enough to focus on what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, when I get in a room, and I'm not always in the room, so it doesn't always happen, but when I get in a room, the question I ask is, what are you trying to do? Right? Like, what's the end goal? We're going to do a video series. To what end? Do you want people to come down and visit you as a result of the video series? Or do you just want them to start thinking about you because you have other activity planned to lure them in? You have to let me know what role this video series is going to play. You have to let me know what role these banner ads are going to play. Because that's going to change the way I look at success.
Great stuff from Matt. Highly recommend checking out that full episode. Again, that's Matt Lawler of AEG, just giving us great information on the greater partnerships world. Next up, coming down the wire here on the Best of Digital Social Media Sports podcast, you'll hear a bit of my conversation with Ollie Scheuer. Ollie's just a great guy, really has a passion for the space, and has a great deal of experience and a broad a bit of knowledge in the space as well. He really gives some good insight into the AFL, Aussie Rules Football League, Australian Football League, about what goes into developing fans of that league, especially in a densely populated sports area like Australia, where you may have multiple teams in the same city, and what it means to build a season member base, and also what goes into creating fans. Just really good stuff. So hear a little bit of my chat. Here it is with Ollie Scheuer.
It's the challenge of today, isn't it? And predominantly, going back to where my focus was going to be coming to the AFL, and certainly kind of from my experience outside of sport, but then also moving into sport and the time at the club. It's really, really easy to get caught into the day-to-day hustle, particularly when you're in season. And our season, we have our men's season, which runs from March till October, which includes pre-season throughout February, which is a kind of a pre-season competition. Mm-hmm. You also have our women's competition, which kicks off in February and runs through to April. So the season is extending. So kind of the week-to-week proposition becomes longer because you predominantly end up in the week every week, and depending on results, and this is a real struggle for clubs too, and particularly when budgets are limited and you've got to be able to drive the biggest bang for the budgets. But it's very easy to get caught into the short-term focus. Mm-hmm. So you're constantly just looking at those short-term metrics, which is bums on seats, the attendance element. Obviously, TV viewership is hugely important for the value of the broadcast negotiation in the future. But it's also, if we know that more people are watching TV, we have a better chance of having more people come to the game live. That's just a precursor for live consumption. Mm-hmm. But the danger is if you solely are focusing on that week-to-week proposition, every year you just keep focusing on that week-to-week proposition. But the problem is that the funnel to fill that week-to-week proposition becomes smaller and smaller because there's been nothing burning in the background to drive the longer-term focus, which is going to ensure that you don't run out of people to fill that bottom of the funnel attendance piece. So it's really, really important for us as a co to be focused on the participation element. Given that participation is clearly a massive lead indicator for future support. And we know that if you're participating in the game, you're more likely to be a fan of the game, and then you're also more likely to be a fan of the club, And bearing that in mind, we work really, really hard with programs from almost, I would say, 5 years old. There's conversations, and there are separate programs around the country that are focused on kind of pre-5-year-old, but getting the ball in hand with really strong school programs, community programs, to ensure that kids are experiencing footy, getting a taste of what footy could look like, and evolving that product as they grow older, and their needs for sport change, and particularly around kind of the competitiveness of it. But then at the same time, it's also really, really important to understand that there are people out there that will become fans of the game without actually ever playing it, and so you've got to find a way to exist in their lives, particularly through that really, really tough spot of that teenage years and those early millennial days, if I can say that, where life is taking a very different focus, and the idea of kind of either attending sport, watching sport, or even playing sport kind of falls down the list of, but these are all the other things I've got to do. So finding a way to exist in their lives and being relevant in their lives is a huge focus for that long-term growth piece too.
And I think like a lot of ways we look at how do we market the sport, and what does it mean to be an Aussie Rules football fan. I hear a lot of elements there in that response. Is, in some ways it is the sport you play growing up. It is the sport of Australia. It may be the sport that your parents are most fans of, and then also and you want to say, you talk about the competitiveness of it, and how badass the players are to some degree, how athletic they are, and sort of that cool element, that cool factor, kind of similar to what we have out here with the NBA to some degree. And so and then you have the element of, it's just it's a good time, it's an entertainment, option that should be part of the other entertainment options that you are considering, and here's why it's the best one. So what's the approach you take? Is it that it's your roots to be a fan and player of the sport that tends to resonate the most with the younger and up and coming audience, or does it vary for generations? And what's that perception you want when someone thinks of AFL when they're a sports fan?
You're absolutely right. It varies across generations, but then it varies within generations. And I want to call out kind of elevating all millennials to be the same is complete nonsense. Right. And the reality is that even within kind of that generation, people are very different to people of the same generation. So it is very, very different, and a lot of testing and learning, but also kind of executing different propositions based on really understanding kind of your audience. And it is very much in the traditional states. For a long time, we've been lucky enough to leverage this generational element. I was born in New South Wales, but my grandparents and my mum were born in South Australia, which is, quite a traditional football state. And so whilst growing up, massive rugby league fan because I lived in New South Wales, but I did have affiliation with AFL because my grandparents were massive Port Adelaide supporters, and I ended up becoming a massive Port Adelaide supporter myself, because when I would go to Adelaide, which was very regularly, I would, particularly at an age where I was capable of doing it myself, I would always take my grandparents to the footy, and there was that real special bond, emotional connection. It wasn't about the product that was on field. I mean, obviously, the more you attend and the more you kind of consume that product, the more you start to identify with it and become quite obsessed with it. But it was always about that emotional connection, family time for me, and what those memories will be for me forever is the most important thing about my fan development in Aussie Rules. And that's very much the same for a lot of people. But I think particularly when you don't have that generational legacy, and so you look at New South Wales and Queensland, like for any form of what am I going to do to entertain myself, or what am I going to do with this spare time and spare money I have, it's mostly looking at how am I going to service those needs for people to, have a fun experience, have a social experience. The social element is massive, for sport, whether it be playing, whether it be watching it on TV, or whether it be going to that game. We constantly see that people dropping out of kind of any form of association or affiliation with the sport is usually because they don't have the social connection to it. So going for a good time, going for a work event, and again, that can be for a networking perspective or still from a social perspective, so that real social entertainment proposition is massive in markets where the footy isn't going to sell the game for us, and that generational legacy isn't going to sell the game for us. So you've got to find a way to make the proposition relevant to those people based on the reality of the needs that they have. And go back to the top of the conversation, we did talk a little bit about how sport can be a little bit different because, maybe it doesn't have a need to service like a product or a particular brand. But the reality is, like, everybody has needs and everybody has wants. And, whether or not you're a sport or a bank, at the end of the day, people are going to consume your product if it services a need of theirs. And, whilst the elements of sport can often be probably a little bit more grandeur by way of like sense of belonging or self-actualization, sense of identity, that things, there are always kind of those things of like, well, I just want to have a good time. So this looks like it's the best choice for having a good time in Sydney tonight.
And I'm sure you're always trying to balance those two, not competing, but different ways of approaching fandom. And you have that, this is me, this is my part of my identity, or as opposed to the other side of the coin where I enjoy going to the movies, I enjoy surfing, and I enjoy going to Aussie Rules football games on the weekend. That's my entertainment, and it's fun, and it's a way to socialize. So, and I think something I want to discuss with you is the idea of membership that you talked about earlier. And I feel like the membership certainly skews more toward that identity. Like I'm a member, my parents are members, my grandparents are members, and I can't imagine it's not even a choice for me to be a member or not. And I think out here, we're evolving in that way where before, if you were a season ticket holder, all it meant was you had a ticket to every game in the same seat. And now it's evolving a bit to you have a ticket to every game, and it may not be the same seat, maybe you have a flex plan. And I think we're trying to add more membership items where you have access to a discount at the team store. You have, you get free food at the games, or you get certain meet and greets with players. So tell us a little about the membership idea and how important it is to maintain that moving forward while also evolving with the, evolving needs and wants of the up and coming generations.
Yeah, look, you've absolutely nailed the thinking there. I think particularly in Australia, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Aussie Rules as a sport has often been looked upon as a real leader in terms of that product and predominantly how you kind of get that sense of identity and that sense of belonging through a product. And the AFL across all the clubs, we had I'm going to get in trouble for not getting this exactly right, but I think it was the second year in a row. I think this year we're going for third. For the 18th year in a row, we've seen growth in membership, and for the third year in a row, we've actually eclipsed the 1 million mark for members. So we have over 1 million members, which means that 1 in 24 Australians are a member of a football club here in Australia, which is incredible, right? Like, and it's phenomenal. And, again, just to give you a little bit of taste about the difference between, the new markets for New South Wales and Queensland and the established markets for Victoria, like, I've since moved to Melbourne. Again, was originally New South Wales, moved to Adelaide, and now in Melbourne. But in Melbourne, you could literally walk into a coffee shop, and if you're the type of person that is comfortable with starting up conversations with strangers, within 15 minutes, and possibly very early on in that conversation, at some point the question's going to get raised of who do you support in the footy? And the immediate question that follows that is, are you a member? So there's this real membership culture in the likes of those established markets where, and I have to credit Sean Callanan here because who's a big sports guy out here who, through his podcast, I've heard this term a lot, but there's almost this guilt level of marketing that's done from the ground up, from the community of members, that you're almost pressured into going, well, no, I'm not a member. Like, and I have to say I am a member, therefore I better make sure I get a membership. So it's a real social norm to be a membership of a footy club, in these states. Whereas in New South Wales and Queensland, there just isn't a membership culture. It's not to say that there aren't people that are really strongly attached to each of the clubs in New South Wales and Queensland, and they are as avid as those people in Victoria. But again, their reasons for connection are usually because they've either followed the two teams that have been moved out of Melbourne into New South Wales and Queensland. So for a bit of history, the Sydney Swans, which is one of the most successful and most well-regarded and followed teams in the AFL, they were originally out of South Melbourne, and they were relocated to Sydney to grow the game. And then similarly, the Brisbane Lions, which are a bit further north in Queensland, they were another team that was moved out of Victoria, and established in Queensland. And then within the last 10 years, 2 new clubs have been added to both of those states. So we've got the Giants in Sydney, which are predominantly the Greater Western Sydney. So they're focused in growing the game in a new area of increased importance for the sport. And then you've got the Gold Coast Suns. So, I think the Gold Coast is relatively renowned around the world, but beautiful strip of beaches, incredible city where they've been, again, only been there for about 10 years. So, but there isn't a membership culture like there is. So the membership proposition takes a really different angle. As I said, there are still those that will buy the full season membership, but it has elevated the need to continuously evolve what the membership proposition means, and whether or not that be from a value perspective in terms of all those offerings that you were discussing and the added benefits of what it means to be a member, whether that be accessibility, whether or not that be through price access, like for, merch, cheaper games. It's obviously, at the end of the day, it is a bundled product that makes each game cheaper, and that's been an ever-increasing conversation and an ever-evolving area of focus for me, because membership growth is a key indicator for the health of the sport. So it's a big focus for New South Wales and Queensland, and seeing the membership of those clubs grow. But in saying that, it's not to say that in the traditional markets that membership proposition hasn't needed to be revisited. For a long time, there's been a huge focus. We play 22 games a season, of which every club gets 11 home games. And that 11-game reserve seat membership product, both from a yield perspective, but also in terms of that elevation of affinity and that idea of avid fan base. If you're coming to 11 games and you've got a reserve seat, obviously you're kind of at the product end of utopia for us. Like, that's where we would love to push everyone. But the reality is that will continue to come under pressure as the habits of consuming live sport continue to change, and the needs and proposition continues to evolve for what a membership could or shouldn't or would be.
Yeah, it's a lot of good points there, and I'm curious, and I know it's going to differ in the different markets that you guys serve in the AFL. What is there an ideal path? I mean, first off, just super impressive that you guys have had any growth in membership. I mean, out here in the States, I think attendance is mostly falling, and season ticket sales are definitely falling, and it's a scary proposition for many organizations out here. And the fact that you guys are seeing some growth in places is amazing. And I think we have that paradigm of, okay, we're going to have a fan's going to go to a game, we're going to get that fan to go to another game, we're going to get that fan to realize they're going to enough games where they should buy a mini plan or a flex plan, and then maybe it becomes a quarter season or a half season. Maybe they share season tickets, and then eventually, when they can afford it, they get to that full season plan, and then we try to retain them. And that's kind of the pathway to that highest value fan. Not to say that every fan can become a season ticket holder just because it's not financially feasible for every fan. But what is that path? What does that pathway look like to guiding someone up the fan spectrum for the AFL?
Yeah, look, and it won't be too dissimilar in terms of kind of the ultimate goal is to get them to the higher yielding, higher involved product. For obvious reasons, the more commercially healthy the game is, the more it can invest into the grassroots of the game, but also evolve the entire proposition of the game through kind of the ability to pay all players, male and female, to engage and evolve the tech opportunities, the stadiums, all that sort of stuff. So, the ultimate goal is to get everyone to a point where they're consuming the better product for everybody's value. But I think, the reality is that we have to be okay with the fact that most people, and I say that, most people aren't going to increase their level of investment or level of engagement. And our job is to, at the very minimum, ensure that they're maintaining their level of investment and level of commitment year on year. So, it's very easy to get caught up on thinking that the person that goes to every home game is your most important fan. And from a visibility perspective, particularly when it comes to kind of the broadcast element and having a full stadium, that is hugely valuable. There's no question about that. But the person that comes to one game is just as valuable because there's going to be many more people that are going to come to one game.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the overarching mass of those one gamers combined is hugely important. And then coupling that with the fact that, you got to keep evolving your tech and your data capabilities to be able to understand customer lifetime value, but also have a single customer view for how they're behaving across different elements of fandom. But that person that's going to one game might only be going to one game, but they could be spending $1,000 on merch every year. They could be highly engaged in terms of checking the website, the app, the social media. They could be every single day. They could be tipping. They could be in fantasy football. You know, they're the way that they behave as a fan, could be just as vital and just as high level of fandom as the person that's coming to 11 game. In fact, I know people, and again, not to leverage the sample of one here, but it has been kind of indicated through research that there are people that are such big fans of the sport that they don't go to the game because it's too stressful to watch. So my grandparents, for years I can remember, they would never, they couldn't go to many games live unless I took them, but they would never, ever watch the game on TV live. They would record it, make sure they knew the score before they watched it. So when they watched it, they weren't going to, my grandfather was, love him to death, but the hardest person in the world to watch footy with, because all he would do was get angry at the TV and, why did you do that? No, stupid kick. And, and so that's a really hard thing to comprehend, that your biggest fans may actually be not wanting to come to the games. So I think, as people's needs and their circumstances and where they're at mentally with sports consumption changes, we have to be willing to be able to have the right product, the right communications, the right offering and proposition mix, so that that's okay for them, that they don't feel like they're any less important, they're any less heard than the person that's willing to buy a season ticket.
Great stuff from Ollie. Really always enjoy exchanging ideas with him, exchanging insights with him. Just really offers a lot of good thoughts and insight into the space, and continues to do good work as well. Last up, we have come to the end here, but the best is for last, or at least one of the best. Really, this whole episode is just incredible. You're going to hear from Brad Friedman. He was with minor league baseball when we spoke. Now he is with STN Digital. Of course, STN is just a freaking all-star agency, it seems like. Everyone that works there is incredible. But in this part of my chat with Brad, you'll hear a little bit about what goes into the social media strategy for minor league baseball. When Brad came on to MILB, he was really the first in his role and got to help develop what minor league baseball wanted to be on social. You also got to have a lot of fun working with all the teams with all their quirks and the various markets around the country. And it's a lot of fun learning from Brad and talking to him. So listen up for a bit of my chat with Brad Friedman, then with minor league baseball, now with STN Digital.
It's very sobering to take on a property with this much history and this much impact. I mean, over 41 million fans come to our games every year.
Wow.
And it's, a pretty monumental task to just be introspective and think about, who are we? What do we serve? What do people experience when they interact with our product? And how do we take what's happening on our 160 teams and 160 markets and reflect that into a social strategy for both our national platforms and for our teams? Mm-hmm. And what we ended up doing was just kind of doing a self audit about who we are. So Neil, the next time you go to a minor league baseball game, I want you to stand at the exits. I want you to ask people 3 questions. What was the final score? Who was the visiting team? And tell me one thing you remember from the night. I will put my next paycheck that 80% of fans will not be able to answer those first 2 questions, but everyone's going to tell you something they remember from the night. They're going to remember getting a good beer. They're going to remember taking a picture with the mascot. They're going to remember their kids getting a high five from a player. We are not in the baseball business. We are in the memory making business.
Hell yeah.
And that's not to say that baseball isn't important. It's obviously in our name. It's a core tenet to who we are. But but we have to. What we realize is we have to be different about the way we approach it. We have to, for lack of a better term, be picky. You might remember that a home run was hit. There were fireworks going off. The crowd was cheering. There was the horn going off. You remember that a home run was hit. Yeah, you couldn't tell you what the score was or who the player was that hit it. But you remember there was a home run. Mm-hmm. And so what we realized was, hey, there's room in our story for talking about baseball and talking about the next generation of prospects coming up and for their rise to glory in Major League Baseball. And there's room for those stories, but we need to be so much more holistic in the story we tell, because a minor league baseball experience is so expansive. It's the food, it's the camaraderie, it's the community, it's the uniforms, it's the promotions, it's the interactivity with and access to players. And we wanted to implement a social strategy and a content strategy and a tonality strategy that accurately reflected all the hard work and all the amazing innovation that our 160 teams are putting on the ground floor every single day.
Really well put. I love all of that. And it gives me goosebumps just hearing you articulate it too. And I always love when people can articulate that strategy and that brand and what they're trying to do. And it's not just, we create whatever viral content and memes and stuff. But I'm curious, who is the audience for MILB's national channels? I mean, are you trying to talk to the fans of the Lansing Lugnuts as much as you are the Rocket City Trash Pandas, or is there a certain type of fan that's going to follow MILB? And do you even care? Are you more focused on, I'd rather than follow and be engaged with the clubs on their level, and MILB is just kind of more of an amplifier or a gatekeeper of some of the best of?
So you described it pretty well. We do definitely just act as an amplifier or a curator. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I don't work in a ballpark. I work in an office, mm-hmm. and it's my job to be in 160 places at once and keep tabs on 160 teams and amplify really these best moments. In terms of the audience we're trying to reach, we are fighting. I don't want to say fighting. Fighting is a strong word. We are faced with a hyper-localization problem in minor league baseball. So, mm-hmm. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, so I love going to Columbus Clippers games. Went there all the time as a kid, and even as an adolescent, as an adult. Loved being out in the sun, being with my loved ones, drinking a cold beer. You love the ballpark, and love everything about it. And so I am an established Columbus Clippers fan, and the definition of fan varies. I might care about baseball, I might just care about the beer. But mm-hmm. I'm a Columbus Clippers fan. Now, how do we get me in Columbus, Ohio, to care about what's going on in Corpus Christi, Texas, and the Corpus Christi Hooks? Mm-hmm. We face a bit of a gap in getting our local fans to be brand advocates for minor league baseball. With a lot of the major leagues, say the NBA, you might not be a hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fan, but if you see Giannis taking off from the free throw line and dunking, all right, well, I'm a basketball fan. I'm mm-hmm. an NBA fan. I'm going to interact with that content or take 2 seconds to stop my scroll and watch it. And that is what is making these major leagues so popular, that they're just able to cultivate popularity because of the totality of what their product offers. What we want to get to is connecting more of our local fans to say, hey, you love the Lansing Lugnuts. But hey, there's so much more that minor league baseball has to offer, beyond just your local team, and that's why we want to implement a strategy that appeals to every walk of fan. We want to be inclusive in the discrepancy between on-field content and off-field content. Sometimes mm-hmm. highlights work, sometimes it's our mascots put it on skits and pranks and all the off-field antics that go on. We have to be a lot stricter about the baseball content we share. If we post a highlight, that should be the kind of highlight that, I don't care if you're a Braves fan or a Cardinals fan, you see a guy diving over the wall for a catch, that's a great piece of content. And that's something that's going to appear on SportsCenter that night. And those are the moments that we want to connect with. So, we firmly believe that minor league baseball is for everybody. Regardless of your socioeconomic background, race, religion, sexual orientation, 81% of Americans live within a minor league baseball market, and it is financially attainable to come to our games. So we want to talk to as many people as possible and really be that beacon for community gathering and safe, affordable entertainment.
I love that. And I think too, like, I love the idea that, yeah, we want to identify these baseball plays and highlights that can transcend, that anyone that's a sports fan or even not a sports fan can appreciate an incredible diving catch, a home run that goes 450 feet, whatever it may be. And then also, just on the same token, anyone, any fan, any person on social media can appreciate seeing a wacky contest or a mascot race that went awry, or any number of promotions and things as well. So you have this ability to appeal to very much a national audience, even if they couldn't name one player or even know what state a city is in for a given minor league club. And I think also, like, first off, I want to hear what's your process like for even being able to curate all that. Like, you can't monitor that many games every single day, and let alone the stuff that happens off the field. So are you just a matter of just keeping track of Twitter lists, using CrowdTangle to see what's really resonating with a local fan base and then amplifying it? Like, how do you go about trying to find that content that's worth amplifying out to the national audience?
Well, first, we're investing in a cloning program to hopefully get me out to as many ballparks as possible. Until that comes to fruition, you rattled off a handful of technology. Obviously, your employer in Greenfly, we are loyal members. Love Greenfly. Love being able to have access to
checks in the mail.
Our connections on the ground. CrowdTangle has been a great asset, though the lack of a Twitter connection these days is bumming me out a little bit.
Yep.
But still a great tool. Twitter lists are great, but above any kind of technology is relationships. I have 160 plus friends at the clubs. I do my best to form relationships with as many of these social contacts as possible, and be an asset for them, be a champion for them, help them out, and be a guiding light for them. Because at the end of the day, I work for the clubs.
Yeah.
Minor league baseball pays my bills, but I work for the clubs. So I'm so heavily invested in their success, and by doing so, I hope to form relationships with these people so that, hey, I'm a trustworthy source for these. When you have a moment that's worthy of national amplification, you can trust me to package that out and amplify it from our platforms accordingly. I think our shining example, I visited our team in Portland, Maine 2 seasons ago now. Portland Sea Dogs, AA affiliate of the Boston Red Sox. So I visited them for a game, and say hey to everyone, just kind of get a face of the name or face of the email, yeah. And about 2 weeks later, after returning, their mascot Slugger reenacted the Dirty Dancing lift dance at the end. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I had no idea this was happening. No idea, it was even a thing. This is what Slugger did. And so their contact said, hey, here we have this video for you if you want it. I'm like, yes, I do want it. Posted on our across multiple platforms, including Facebook. About 27 million impressions, I think.
Wow.
That's accumulated organically. And that's just because of, I took the time to form a relationship. So you form those relationships, and you stay as planned as possible. And I think you're on your way. I always like to say there are two kinds of content in our world. There's the stuff you can prepare for, and there's the stuff you can't prepare for. So we do our best to prepare for the content that we know is coming. Those promos or military reunions or first pitches or skits, things that we know are happening, and get our cameras placed accordingly. And then when we're ready to go for the prepared content, that's when these unexpected moments, German Shepherd running on the field in Tulsa, or girl running on the field in Charleston, like, we're ready for those moments, and those moments matter too.
It sounds like so much fun. Just always, like, so much content to always monitor, and fun stuff that just comes out of nowhere, and fun stuff you can plan for as well. Do you find that there are certain best practices or ideas or tactics that work well across the board, and then you also have to balance that with the fact that the fans of the River Cats are different than fans of the Aqua Sox, and there's these market changes as well that you have to take into account. So, like, balancing sort of the stuff that's going to work well on Instagram right now versus the stuff that's more targeted toward your fans, your audience, and your locale?
Well, that's kind of the fun thing about really developing out the national platforms is really trying to create so many more touch points and developing new swaths of fans. Yeah, you're right. A lot of developing strategies has kind of been testing and seeing and figuring out what content works on particular platforms. What works on Instagram that might not work on Facebook, what works on TikTok might not work on Twitter. And so it's just about realizing the content we have, figuring out how to package it according to the platform, and delivering it in a way that is appealing to as broad of an audience as possible. We never want to be narrow-minded in the approach that we have. We never want to talk to a really niche group of individuals, because that's not what minor league baseball is about. It all ties back to us being inclusive and welcoming of all people. So we want to be expansive and package things out the correct way.
And as far as being a resource for all the clubs and helping to curate some of those best practices or some of those good ideas that people may be able to emulate or make their own or adapt, are you trying to do that with whether it's email newsletters or Slack, just sharing some stuff that, hey, this is something cool that this team did. It may work for you, but it may not work for you.
We as informal as it may seem, we have a Facebook group of about 350 content creators across minor league baseball, social media folks, marketing folks, communications folks, and as easy and low production value as that is, has been an incredibly helpful resource to connect people and to share ideas and give attaboys and kind of be that, establish ourselves as the center of excellence. But above all else, honestly, I've never worked for a minor league baseball team, as we've established, and it's really beneficial to stay connected with each other. I maintain there's no better, more innovative group of people in sports than minor league baseball. You're talking about a group of teams and organizations that vary so vastly in amount of resources and market size and stadium quality. And every single one of these teams brings a fresh new set of ideas to the table, and it is honestly awe-inspiring to see how teams progress and engage their fans. So, I might have some good ideas and might be a little bit more technically precise and spend more time on social. But I'm really interested in getting these teams together. And, when you have that many smart people in one room, or in our case, one Facebook group, it's amazing what can come out of it.
Well, I'm sure what a fun Facebook group that must be. And one of the questions I need to save for maybe our quick hitting segment, I would love to I'm not expecting you to do it because it would take forever, but I'm wondering if somehow you could rattle off all 160 minor league teams without cheating. That'd be a hell of a feat.
I mean, I could do it. I just don't think your listeners would let me sit there and listen to it.
For the next 15 minutes, Brad will be reciting every minor league baseball team in the greater United States. Oh gosh.
Well, I will say it is because I know every team where they're located, who they're affiliated with, what their level is, and it does turn into a fun party trick at times. I'll meet somebody out and about, and they mention they mentioned they're from Altoona, Pennsylvania. Oh yeah, the Altoona Curve. You head out to any of their games, and definitely good icebreaker. I tell my wife all the time. Some people in this world are their minds are filled with information about medicine or engineering, and they're building bridges. And mine is filled with minor league baseball. That's what I contribute to the world.
Do you find that the fans of each of the minor league clubs, are they generally also fans of the affiliates? Do they then watch these players grow up and graduate to the major league level, or is it more so the case that they're fans of this team, this location, and they're more fans of the Curve than they are of the affiliate?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because the answer is it's complicated. It depends on the market. It depends on, again, we've established that there are so many different levels of fandom. We like to say, the older gentleman sitting behind home plate keeping score is just as much of a fan in our eyes as a little kid rolling around in right field with chocolate ice cream all over his face. And honestly, there are probably more kids rolling around with chocolate ice cream all over their face. But no, I think it depends on location. I think you look at A situation like the Pawtucket Red Sox, soon to be the Worcester Red Sox. That's a market that's very heavily Red Sox as is, and you do see a lot of connection between people watching these guys come up in AAA Pawtucket and eventually move on to Boston. Toledo's another great example. They're affiliated with the Detroit Tigers right away, or that are very, very, very nearby, I should say. So you have a lot of crossover there. You do have some cases in, like I say, the Greenville Drive or in South Carolina are a Red Sox affiliate, and sometimes you'll see people in that neck of the woods be a fan of the Red Sox because, hey, they grew up watching a Red Sox affiliate. So you do see that sometimes, and then you see, the Washington Nationals AAA affiliates in Fresno, California. Probably not a whole lot of connections you can make there, but those people who go to the Grizzlies games are still, fans going to the ballpark and seeing these guys. So it's just a wide spectrum of markets and teams, and the relationships between these teams and their major league affiliates, it's all different. It differs. Sometimes it influences, sometimes it doesn't. But hey, we're here to serve all fans and get them interested any way we can.
Again, I told you it was fun talking to Brad. I highly recommend that full episode because there's just a lot of good information, a lot of good ideas too that came out of my chat with Brad. So listen to that full chat. And Brad continues to do great work now. But that'll do it for this Best of the Digital and Social Media Sports podcast. Again, thanks for tuning in. We got tons of good new episodes on the way. Again, so grateful to all these folks for speaking with me, for lending some of their time and their insight and their knowledge. Again, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit up the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. I'm also on LinkedIn, where you can look at my name and find more content there. And, of course, follow along on the podcast platform that is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.